doozy. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Erin Village Alliance Church on this incredible Easter Sunday morning. You guys made it. It's the right place. People were chirping me all morning, you know. We're normally a pretty casual, laid-back bunch, you know, come as you are type. I'm getting a wave. Does that mean my mic is not on? My mic is on. We're normally pretty laid back and all this kind of stuff, and just because I suit up, people are like, am I in the wrong spot? Like, am I supposed to be here? You are in the right place, and I don't know if that's ever happened to you. Has that ever happened to you where you like go somewhere and you're like, am I kind of in the right place? Have you ever felt that awkward? Like, for instance, if we were all to look at one of you at the same time when you walked in the place, we're not going to do that, because you are here, you're at the right place. And it's great to have you here. This is the party, and you know what? All of this is for you. Yeah. Woo! Oh, no, okay, I'll explain that. I'll explain what I mean by that. All of this is for you. Why don't you grab a Bible? We've got some bench Bibles in front of you. There's the YouVersion Bible app, which we recommend. And go ahead and flip to Matthew chapter 28. Is this thing on? Have you figured it out? It's not on. All right. Well, I've got the green light, so I'll just yell. You guys, we can hear you. There's no surprise. There's no surprise about that. Matthew chapter 28, let me read to you this story. It says, after the Sabbath, at dawn on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to look at the tomb. There was a violent earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven, and going to the tomb, rolled back the stone and sat on it. His appearance, it says, was like lightning, and his clothes were as white as snow. The guards were so afraid of him that they shook and become like dead men. The angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid, for I know you are looking for Jesus who was crucified. He is not here. He is risen, just as he said. Come and see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell his disciples, he is risen from the dead and is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him. Now I've told you." And so the women hurried away from the tomb, it says, afraid yet filled with joy, mixed emotions. And they ran to tell his disciples. And suddenly, in the middle of this running, Jesus met them. And greetings, he said. I don't know if that's actually what he said. Like, maybe he did just say, greetings, he said. And they recognized him. They came to him and clasped his feet. And they worshipped him, it says. Verse 10 says, then Jesus says to them, do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee. There they will see me. In verse 16, that's exactly what happens. It says that the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain where Jesus had told them to go. And when they saw him, they worshipped him. But some doubted. Isn't that a peculiar kind of addendum to the great story? But some doubt. Oh, but some doubt. Actually, I love that verse. That's actually my kind of church. Yeah, absolutely. It's my kind of church, filled with people who've experienced this awakening of faith because they've had an encounter with Jesus side by side with people who are still exploring and maybe a little skeptical. That's my kind of church. If that's you, the first part or the second part of that equation, I'm so glad you're here. One of my favorite historians and theologians, his name's N.T. Wright. He says, dead people don't come back to life. We know that. And they knew that. So why did the first Christians claim that their crucified Messiah had risen from the dead? That's the question that we're going to talk about today. Why are over 2 billion people around the world celebrating the resurrection of Jesus of Nazareth today? We're celebrating because we believe that Christ is risen. Oh, you're good. Yeah, absolutely. We believe. I put all of my eggs in that basket. That was a little Easter. I know many of you have too. I can tell you that these 2 women, Jesus' 11 closest friends and followers, dozens more. In fact, 2 years after Jesus' crucifixion, the Apostle Paul wrote to the church in Corinth. He says, for what I received, I passed on to you as of first importance, that Christ died for our sins according to the Scriptures, that he was buried, that he was raised on the 3rd day, according to the Scriptures. After that, he appeared to Cephas, who is Peter, and then to the 12. After that, he appeared to more than 500 of the brothers and sisters at the same time. And in this letter to Corinth, he writes, most of whom are still living, though some have fallen asleep. Jesus appeared in the flesh to hundreds of people after his death, before he ascended to heaven. So we celebrate Easter today because of the testimony of these eyewitnesses, these people whose whole lives were rattled because of this event, this miraculous, certainly unexpected event. I read a great quote on Facebook and been passing it around. I've seen it like a dozen times since I shared it. Chuck Colson, who served as special counsel to President Nixon from 1969 to 1970. So if you know American history, yes, right then, this is what he said. Listen to what he said about Easter. He said, "I know the resurrection is a fact, and Watergate proved it to me." How? Because 12 men testified that they had seen Jesus raised from the dead, and then they proclaimed that truth for 40 years, never once denying it. Every one of them was beaten and tortured and stoned and put in prison. They would not have endured that if it weren't true. Watergate embroiled 12 of the most powerful men in the world, yet they couldn't keep alive for 3 weeks. You're telling me 12 apostles could keep alive for 40 years? Absolutely impossible. That's why we're here. That's why we're here, to celebrate with surety the resurrection of Jesus. This fact that changed history, this fact that is still changing people's lives. His first followers staked their lives on this fact, which is why the early church experienced explosive growth in the face of terrible and very real persecution. They were constantly under threat. They faced real danger. Christianity was actually outlawed, meaning it was illegal for the first 200 years of its existence. Just think about that. While the church was in its infancy, by sheer numbers seemingly at its weakest, it grew and it spread like wildfire. Why? Because of this fact. We celebrate the Resurrection Sunday because there is simply nothing more important to us. The resurrection of Jesus is the basis, the foundation of our faith. And when I say that, of course, I'm not excluding his death and the circumstances around it. But Easter isn't about what happened to Jesus on Friday. It's about what happened for us on Sunday. That's right, for us. Have you ever thought about that? Have you ever thought about, like, who is Easter for? Who's Easter for? I know most of you think, well, Easter's definitely for kids. Bunnies and baskets and chocolate eggs, stuff like that. I know if you ask most people, they would say, well, Easter is kind of for Christians because no one else really cares. They would say that. I already told you. I think Easter's for skeptics. Yeah, absolutely. I think Easter's for doubters, for people who struggle to believe that Jesus may have been raised from the dead. And I get it, okay? Like, I get that this is hard to believe. It is a miracle. By its very definition, this isn't normal. But I told you before, the only church I would ever want to be part of is a church where those who doubt are standing side by side with those who have thoroughly become convinced and now worship the risen Jesus. And so we love that you're here. That's the whole point of that. We love you're here. I hope that same love convinces you maybe to explore and investigate this stuff. That's my hope for this Easter. If historians agree that Jesus of Nazareth was indeed publicly crucified. If you missed on Friday, we talked a little bit about that. Crucified by professional executioners, right? Each with probably hundreds of notches in their belt. They were experienced professional executioners. There was no mistake. Jesus was crucified, dead, died, done. If his body was then taken down from the cross, under supervision, prepared for burial, wrapped in burial cloths, if it was placed in a dug-out tomb, if the chief priests and the Pharisees, we read the chief priests and the Pharisees went to Pilate after Jesus' disciples had gathered, and they said, you know what, we don't want them to fake Jesus' resurrection. They actually called Jesus the deceiver. We don't want that deceiver Jesus and his followers to sort of fake a resurrection. Jesus told them, there ain't no grave that's going to hold. He had warned them. He had prophesied beforehand he would be raised from the dead. And so they went to Pilate to ask him to assign guards so that the disciples couldn't steal the body and fake a resurrection. So that's exactly what Pilate did. He assigned guards to seal the tomb. That means they went in, they confirmed the body, and then they rolled a giant stone. Actually, some say it wasn't a rolled stone. It was a cork-shaped There's some really interesting archaeology you can read about of tombs that they have excavated from the first century around Jerusalem. Only the very most wealthy people could afford the kind of tomb that had a giant circular stone, you may have seen pictures, to roll in front. Everybody else carved out a sort of a square cork-shaped stone, packed it in there so that nothing can get in, and so no. Anyways, interesting stuff. I know it's easy to be skeptical. I get it. Like, it's just harder to be skeptical once you investigate. Pilate said to the chief priests and the Pharisees, "Go and make the tomb as secure as you know how." Like, as secure as you know how. The most powerful people alive at the time, the same people who got together to order Jesus' death, got together again to make sure that his body, his dead body, after being crucified, was sealed in the tomb. How sealed? As secure as they know how. How sure were they that Jesus was dead? They were sure. How sure were they that his body was lying in that tomb? Oh, they were sure. How secure was the tomb? Sealed with a giant rock, marked with a Roman seal, authenticating that the grave was occupied. A warning to grave robbers or whoever that if it was disturbed, it was punishable by death. And then the tomb was protected by a Roman guard. Now, I don't want you to think of a single Roman guard, some guy named Joe or Schmuck. No, it wasn't that. A Roman guard was a 16-man unit, each member responsible for 6 square feet. This is how they did it. They were not allowed to sit or lean against anything while they were on duty. Ancient Rome was nuts. Okay, Herod was nuts. He was crazy. If a guard member, one of his guard, fell asleep, he was beaten and burned with his own clothes. Not only him, sometimes the entire 16-man unit, you're all in this together, would be executed if one member fell asleep while on duty. And I'm not judging, okay? You can see I'm getting worked up. I'm not judging. I'm just saying that if you've actually investigated Friday at all, I'm just saying it's hard to be skeptical. To imagine first that, and some say this, to imagine first that someone could have faked his own death by crucifixion. No, you couldn't. Jesus of Nazareth, historical Jesus, he was killed, he was crucified, dead, done. To imagine that somehow somebody, like an elite black ops group of fishermen, could have stolen, executed this elaborate plan to steal this body from in order to fake he was killed publicly by the best in the business and then sealed in a tomb and guarded. Listen, I get it. Yeah, but buckle. You're asking me to believe that Jesus was raised from the dead. Like, I wasn't there. But yeah, like, I kind of believe that. That's what the two women said. I know women do tend to get emotional. Okay, I'm kidding. That was a joke. That was like some of you are like, Buckle, you want to go there on Easter Sunday, do you? No suit's going to protect you, Buckle. That's what they believed. These two women, they believed it. Not just the angel encounter. Remember, they met Jesus. They wrapped their arms around his legs. The 11 saw him too. Then others. Then hundreds. Soon thousands, tens of thousands. Now 2.3 billion people believe this. 2.3 billion people today believe this. Remember, at that time, the last person to say out loud that Jesus was the Son of God was Jesus himself. And what did they do to him? They crucified him for saying that. They crucified him. Why would hundreds of people start saying the same thing? Why would they risk saying something like that unless they had encountered the same Jesus who died, now alive and in the flesh? Why would they admit that? Why would they risk that? On the hillside in Galilee, remember we read about that. Hundreds of people confronted the same reality and the same risk, and they worshipped him publicly, not in hiding. On a hillside in Galilee, they worshipped him. Despite seeing him in the flesh, despite all of the evidence, it says that amongst that group of hundreds of convinced, some held on to their doubt. But still, Jesus did it all. He went through it all. For who? For them too. Absolutely, for them too. The Bible, which is not the only record of these events, is certainly the primary record for his followers. The Bible says that he did it all for them, whether they believed him or not. Jesus died for the skeptical. That's kind of cool, eh? Yeah, one of his closest friends, Thomas, was a skeptic. He wasn't there the first time Jesus appeared to his disciples that Jesus showed. And so he told them, they're like, Thomas, you'll never guess what just happened. And he said, right, I won't guess what happened. He said, unless I see the nail marks in his hands, unless I put my fingers where the nail marks, unless I put my hand into his side, that's the place he was pierced by the executioner because he was appeared dead, and that's where he was pierced with this spear or whatever. It wasn't until a week later when Jesus came back and revealed himself once again to them, and he says, come on, Thomas. Like, if this is what you need, come touch my hands. Touch my hands, feel the wound in my side. Thomas, come on, set aside your doubts. Set your doubts aside and believe. Why don't you risk belief, even as I'm standing face to face with you? That's what he does. That's what Jesus does when we doubt. He rises from the grave, and he shows us what life looks like where we were expecting something different. Yeah, we all do that. Sometimes we just lose sight of the faith part of our lives, and we expect, oh no, this is a terrible turn. This is when things go only downhill. And Jesus rises in those moments, and he says, no, I'm still alive for this. I'm big enough for this. I love that. I love that Jesus died for skeptics. And maybe that's not you. Maybe you're not skeptical, but maybe you're here today and you're feeling a little stuck. Yeah, you're feeling a little stuck. You believe all this. That's why you came. This is part of your routine, part of the kind of the tradition, the rhythm of your life. You believe it, but if you're honest, it's not making much difference in your life. Jesus died for you too. In fact, he used to tell a story about a farmer who went out into his fields, and everywhere his eyes fell, it says he scattered broadcast seeds. But inevitably, some of the seeds fell on a place where even though it looks like they might grow, even though it took hold and started to grow, it never bore any fruit in the story that Jesus tells, because all of this other stuff grew up all around it and literally choked out its potential. That happens to us, right? That absolutely happens to us sometimes. We don't always recognize how the rhythms or, all the activities, the busyness going on around us, that, if we let that stuff grow, if we let it grow, it will. It'll grow bigger and bigger and actually choke out the stuff that God's planted all around us and that God's trying to grow all around us and even in us. So if you're feeling stuck, you picked a great Sunday to be at Erin Village Lions Church, because Resurrection Sunday, more than any others, is when, it came as a total shock to Jesus' friends, remember? His resurrection rattled them. It reminds us, you never know when Christ is going to enter again into your life and unshake or unsettle things so that we can live life more like his life. That's kind of what Easter does for those who are stuck. Remember what he did. Remember what he did. The cross, the songs we sang. Remember what he did. Remember what he went through. You don't think he did that, went through Good Friday so we could punch the clock of our 9 to 5. Right? We could gain weight and grow old and live for the weekend and die no worse for wear. You don't think that's why he did. No, he said, I came that you may have life and have it to the full. And then he died how he did to make resurrection life possible. Like, Daryl, is it a bad thing to be stuck? I don't know if it's a bad thing to be stuck, but you're missing out on so much more. God wants your faith to be alive, and Easter's a perfect day to spark a new fire. And I hope that's what happens. Whether you're a skeptic, whether you just feel stuck, Easter is for you. Of course, Easter also includes maybe you're here, maybe you came today for something far more personal. Hundreds of years before Jesus was even born, there was a prophet who wrote about how God was going to answer the prayers of his people through this one who he would send to live and die a substitutionary death. I've been thinking about that this Easter season. This idea that Jesus' death was a substitute somehow for me. The prophet's name was, I've lost my notes there. The prophet's name was Isaiah. The book was chapter 53. And what he said in verse 4 is he said that the weight that Jesus felt on the cross was the weight of our sorrows. Isn't that neat? The weight he felt was the weight of our sorrows. That Jesus, in this substitutionary death, carried our hurts on the cross. Do you think about that much? It's ironic because I know there are a lot of people, both inside and outside of churches, who are carrying incredible hurts, and some of them at least were hurt. The hurts that they experienced, actually, they experienced in church. And so for many people, when that happens, they press pause on the faith part of their life, and many of them stop coming to places like this. They stop coming even on Easter, or if they come, it's only on special occasions like Easter. And so, like, if that is you today, I guess the question that I want to know is, would knowing that Jesus did what he did to heal your hurt, that he was willing to stoop down and lift off of you the weight of that he would carry the weight of that hurt and that offense, would that help? Would it help? Would it somehow lessen the hurt that whoever it was, whatever they said, however they treated you, would it change things knowing Jesus, the Son of God, God in human flesh, would be willing to go through what he went through for you and your hurt, to take that from you? Would that change anything? Yeah. Whether you're hurt carrying, whether you're hurt and carrying an offense or a wound from something in church, or whether it's something else that life dealt you, would knowing that Easter can change your hurt be good news? I hope it would. I will tell you that this past August, here come the waterworks. This past August, I lost someone who was my closest friend on this earth. He took his own life. In the weeks that followed that experience, I experienced overwhelming love and support from my church here in Erin. I will tell you, though, that I also heard some Christians say that maybe he was better off dead. Right, I know that's how I felt too. I felt that way too, and I know that. And listen, I'm sorry for bringing that up. I bring that up, and I know you knew and loved Paul too. I need you to understand the weight of what I'm about to say right now. Jesus carried my sorrows on the cross. He carried. You may not understand that like I do, but I have found this to be true. I experienced it again in August. I've experienced it since. He carried my sorrow. I felt the weight of that lifted off of me. There's something somehow about the resurrection of Jesus that has the power to lift the weight that you're carrying, to heal the hurts that you're experiencing. And this is the first Easter since that happened, and so it's still fresh for me. Like, not the hurt. No, this is the first Resurrection Sunday. I've had a chance to look up and say, see, Jesus, I see what you did for there. I see what you did for me. Like, I've experienced, I've felt it. How you did that for the hurting, Jesus, I see it. I see it again. I see it so clearly. What you did for the hurting and what you did for the broken. I don't know if that word resonates with you at all. Broken. What do you mean broken, Daryl? Like, I don't want to, that's not how I view myself, broken. Sometimes, though, the thing that we realize we're carrying around is regret. It's shame, even, because of something we did, some hurt that we caused someone else. The truth is, for all of the times that I felt hurt or offended or angry at all of the people who I felt did me some injustice or some wrong, I've probably done that and more to others. Yeah, I do that too. Sin is something we don't like to talk about, but we've all felt it on both sides, right? We've felt the hurt and the offense, but we've also dished out some hurt. We've dished out some offense. We've betrayed, and we've been betrayed. We've been lied to, and we've lied ourselves. You name it, we've felt it, and we've done it. And that's the problem. That sin, in addition to the damage that it causes others, sin actually keeps us from enjoying the grace and the goodness of God in our lives. It robs us of the life that we were created to live. Sin does it, and we're not immune. Please don't hear me condemning you. No, Easter is the opposite of that. Easter is the opposite of a message of condemnation because you're bad and I'm bad. No, it's not. Romans 5:8 says, "For God shows his love for us in this, that while we were still sinners, at our most broken, our most selfish, our most sinful, that's when God demonstrated his incredible love for us." How does God look on sinful people? With love. How's he look on you carrying your regret and your shame? With love, only with love. That's when Jesus died for us, for the skeptic, the stuck or sleeping or whatever, for those of you who feel crushed by the weight of what happened to you, for those of you who feel trapped by what you've done to others. Jesus Christ in love died for you. It's kind of awesome. That's kind of awesome. And when God raised Jesus from the dead, he was at once declaring that his love and his grace is greater than all of your sin or mess. That he had now carried the full weight of human hurt, and he's willing to carry yours too. He himself entered humanity in Jesus Christ, and that means that the power of heaven has now come to earth. Everything's changed. Everything's changed, and it doesn't matter who you are. He came for you. He lived for you. He died for you. He conquered sin and death for you. This morning I want to invite you. Like, why don't you decide again to live for him? Like on Easter Sunday, there's no better day to say, man, Jesus, with all you did, God, with all you did, I'm going to live for you. If you recognize yourself in any of what I just shared, I just thought, who's Easter for? Just a few of them, and there's so many more, but if you recognized yourself in any of what I just said, God is inviting you again to receive the gift, this incredible gift of life, of love, of healing, of joy, of renewal. God is inviting you to receive this gift, and all you have to do is decide. Yeah, today is the day when I'm going to invite Jesus to take my life and to make my life what he created me to be. If you're skeptical, say, God, reveal yourself to me. If what Daryl says is true, would you reveal yourself to me? Help me to see you like those other skeptics see. If you feel stuck today, let Easter rattle you. Look at the cross. Look at what Jesus, let it rattle you. Easter isn't a speed bump. One of my Facebook friends says, I'm so thankful for all of my Christian friends and their holiday. Hey, glad we could give you a... Easter's not a speed bump in your 9 to 5. It's a game changer, right? It's a world changer. If you're hurting, then let me tell you, please hear me this morning. You don't have to go through it alone. Not just can you experience, love and support in a church community like I did, but you can experience the power of God himself just taking some of that weight. And it's so obvious. I wish I could describe to you how it feels when you realize I don't even know how I'm still standing right now, and he's carrying that weight. If you're hurting, you can experience the same Jesus who carried your sorrows can heal your heart, and can all start today. And folks, if this morning you feel like maybe God has been prodding you a bit about some sin, some regret, some sense of shame that you're carrying, we did all of this for you. Not just us. Jesus did all of that for you. And I just want you to see it, that Easter's for you too. I want to invite you all to stand with me. We're just going to say a prayer to receive that gift again. We all need to do this from time to time. We all need to come back and say, man, I need this too. Stand with me. And if today is the first time you've ever felt like you belong, if today's the first time you felt maybe that you were part of this story and you didn't realize it, maybe Jesus did what he did for you. Your name, your face was on his mind. The best response you could possibly have is just give your life back to him. So let's pray this with me. Would you do that? Jesus, I'm just in awe of what you've done for me. That you would take all of my mess and all of my brokenness and all of my sin. That you would stoop down to carry the weight of my hurt and my failures. And God, instead of closing the book on me, you died. And then you rewrote the ending. Jesus, thank you. Thank you for your amazing love for me. And so this morning I'm asking, Jesus, rewrite my life. My life. If this is the first time you've prayed this prayer, the 100th time, Jesus, rewrite my life. Fill me with your love and help me to live for you. Jesus, all I have and all I am is yours. Amen.